for truth.
Welcome to Duality Check, the podcast where two brothers embark on a journey through the realms of scientific inquiry, the mysteries of the past, and the uncharted frontiers of spirituality. Join us as we explore the wonders of our world and beyond, all while embracing the roles of curious bystanders rather than experts. Together we'll unravel the tapestry of existence, blending the dichotomies of knowledge and wonder. Get ready to question, ponder, and delve into the dualities that shape our understanding of reality on Duality Check. I'm Drew.
And I'm Dean, and welcome to episode number 62. This one's going to be a little bit of a grab bag. We didn't have exactly a prepared topic, but I think it's probably going to turn into coverage of the new Jesse Michels episode with Joe McMoneagle about remote viewing and about Mars.
Oh, sick.
Yeah,
I didn't actually catch that one. I watched we'll probably talk about it a little bit more too, but his episode on Danny Jones, where him and Danny Jones sat down and talked about kind of what it's like being the people who are interviewing all the people and, you know, where their heads are at and stuff with all the stuff. Was just pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a good
cool
podcast. I don't know like how much new stuff we got out of that, but it was cool to hear Jesse on the other side of the interview table.
Absolutely. Yeah. When it's funny because they kind of both jumped back and forth of being the interviewer in a sense, like
they
talking
did.
to each other about, you know, asking questions about where they're at and, you know.
They did. Yeah.
But that's,
like Jesse,
I guess we could talk about it now. I think what I got most from it was just hearing them and where they're at, kind of putting all of these things together, because where they do kind of do a good job of it, like with Danny Jones specifically, you more just hear him interviewing people. You don't really hear him talking about what he's taken from all the people's different opinions, and it's cool to hear that. And then even with Jesse, like they talk about like how preposterous it is that
Anonymous.
Yeah, purple pumpkin eater. But yeah, how preposterous it is that like it's like this whole UFO topic in general is like so hard. Like it's almost like impossible to really weed out the real and the fake stuff, because it's just, we have so many years of disinformation and people, you know, within government agencies, like, you know, throwing a bunch of fake stuff out there to catch people. And like,
but then there's also like the charlatans, right? Like there's the people who make a career just off of being in the UFO topic, right? And they're going to bring stuff to the table, whether it's right or wrong, because they need to publish, they need to get paid.
They want to make money off of it. Yeah, there's a whole industry of people making money off of this topic. And they, you know, both of them will both admit too, they both make money off of this too. Like they're part of that whole system, whether they're doing good or bad. You know, whether they're pushing more misinformation just by having certain people on, or like, it's so convoluted. Everything is just, there's so many arrows pointing in all different directions.
Totally.
So it's hard to suss out, but that was interesting watching, like hearing them talk about that.
Yeah.
Talk about it that way.
No, it's interesting because, you know, since we've been doing the podcast is probably when I've gotten really into like following Danny Jones's podcast.
Same.
And I've heard him flip-flop a number of times on his position on UFOs. Yeah. And like it seems like every couple months, like he'll be like, man, I think there's something here. And he'll be like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, and especially you have so many people on that are constantly like giving you different sides and giving you different information, and they all seem credible in their own ways. And you know, some are more specialized, some are more general in their information and intelligence type. And so yeah, he like kind of now, at least in his most recent multiple podcasts on the subject, he just kind of thrown his hands up in the air and been like, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just getting a bunch of information. Nothing's coming of it. Like, I need more hard evidence to really push me over the edge, you know?
Yeah. And he seemed pretty convinced by the sighting he had with Chris Bledsoe.
Yeah.
For a while, but now he's seeming less confident about it these days. He's like, you know, with Jesse, he's like, well, I mean, I don't know what it could have been anything.
Yeah, he was less excited about it, but at the same time, Jesse,
he was still convinced it wasn't an airplane. Like, Definitely not an airplane, according to him. And, I kind of agree based on the videos he shows.
He also plays devil advocate for all the people who are the naysayers within the for that video too. It's like, some people claim that he pays people to like go off in the distance. But it's like very specific. Like you'd have to have you'd have to put a lot of effort because they were in Florida. It's not like it was in his home state where he saw it with Chris Bledsoe. They were on the beach in Florida.
I mean, to defend those people though, Chris Bledsoe spends a ton of time in the intelligence circles with those people. And even if Chris Bledsoe himself is not a person who is attempting to
like he can keep his hands clean while also at the simultaneously being part of something.
Well, just being friends with people in those circles, like they can now know, like, okay, of course we know now he's going down to Florida to be on the Danny Jones podcast. We're going to keep a team.
Close by so we can keep these things going. Mm-hmm. That's true. That's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point.
And, Danny himself says that, there was no plan on where they were going to go. They just went out to dinner and ended up at a beach nearby. But he also said it was about 2 hours before they saw anything. Right. So that's also time for a team to get in place if they're expecting something, right? So
I will say that sending up a drone and at a distance could be easy enough to do. But it does, like that video specifically, you saw it, right? Watching the orb, what they're calling an orb, come up zigzag kind of back and forth and then get super bright before it kind of like breaks up and fades away.
Right.
It's interesting. It's very interesting.
Totally. But yeah, that's a good podcast. I'll leave a link to it for you guys if you're interested in checking it out. We got some messages this week.
Yes, we did.
Let's start with Greg. He sent us a message a few days back on our tarot episode, and he says, "Hi guys, thanks for this episode. Such a coincidence that my boyfriend just bought his tarot deck last week. Funny, huh? As for the meaning of your session, I have no clue, and I won't even pretend that I do. I was trying to get into tarot decades ago, but I felt that it was just too big for me, and I left it. So yeah, I have no clue about it, but I wish you all the best, whatever the meaning anyway. Can't wait for your Discord server. Cheers."
All right, I hear you, Greg. I hear you.
By the way, Greg, I tried to take you up on your offer of like joining the Polish UFO Discord, and I went to the channel you linked to, and I couldn't find a link to the Discord anywhere.
I did that night when we read that message.
I couldn't find it either. If you could shoot us that link, that'd be cool to check out anyway.
But yeah, I hear you, Greg. We're gonna get it up and running. All right, man. Sorry, give me a minute. Give me a minute.
Nah, just keep pestering Drew. It's okay. You have my permission.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you. We also got a message from our sister, and she says, "Tarot Talk. Good job, boys. I love that you ask questions pertaining to the podcast's success, and I think the spread was spot on. Drew, your intuition on the cards' meanings are so amazing. I like that you mentioned talking about what success means and realizing talking about that with each other will be helpful for the podcast growth. That's what I love about tarot. It's a guide and only gives, in my opinion, good advice and guidance. The power of the tarot comes from within, not the cards. It's a guide that helps us go inward and think. I've been playing with tarot for many years now. I'm no expert, nor do I do traditional spreads sometimes, but it's a spiritual meditative practice for me. I use them every month. I like to draw cards for the year at the beginning of the year, as well as my New Year's Eve ritual. I ask my decks. She says she has 7. What might help me in this year? I ask for cards that will help guide me and help me navigate the year ahead. I ask for the cards that will be for my highest good and for the highest good of all I come in contact with. I not only do this at the start of every year, but at the beginning of each month as well. I journal the cards I pull. I read the descriptions and then write my own interpretation of them and what I get from the meaning of the cards. I then go back to my journal whenever I need to. If something is going to happen in my life, I go to my journal and it never fails to help guide me. It's a trip, but like I said earlier, I believe the power lies within us. P.S. The Lover's card pertains to relationships. Doesn't have to be romantic. You two are in a relationship. So I'm sorry I forgot which spot on the reading you pulled that card, but hope that helps if you go back and read its advice with that in mind. Drew, I think you were onto its meaning about communicating with each other about your goals, expectations for the podcast. Follow that. Love the idea of pulling a tarot card on your next episodes or on your episodes. And if you don't have a specific question, you can ask for a card to be pulled like I do that will help guide us and listeners of the Duality Check podcast. Love ya. Kiss, kiss.
Thank you, sister.
Peace out. Number one fan, your sister.
Thank you, sister. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a good point about the Lover's card because that was a thought that came to me. Like,
that was in the position of practical advice.
Yeah.
One of the practical advice steps, I believe.
Yeah.
And so, or no, it was in the motivations.
Yeah, we'd have to.
No, it was in the conscious motivation spot on that.
It was conscious and unconscious.
Because remember the subconscious motivations? I was like, yeah, that's pretty much on point. Like for me, I felt like that was our conscious motivation. Right. But then the Lovers came out in the conscious motivations, and that now makes sense because I have been saying this whole time that the podcast for me is like the way we've been able to keep this going for over a year with, our small, tiny following is that it's not about success. Well, it's not about quote unquote conventional success for us. What it's about is you and I, having time to spend time as brothers and get to talk about these things that we hold, that we're so interested in. And it gives us a chance every week to connect over this stuff.
Absolutely. We get to know each other on a different level. And in turn, we are creating and developing the relationship in our relationship as brothers,
Right.
So that I think it fully makes sense now looking back at it, like having that in the conscious motivations, because it's exactly true. Like it being a Lover's card is, face value, but read deeper into the meaning and create.
Just kind of like how we covered with the Death card, right? And it's not what it necessarily sounds like in a similar way. Like the Lover's card, I like your point there that it can be seen as a relationship card, and I like that. Yeah,
and the other thing I was mad I didn't pull out was, hey, we're G lovers.
That's true. We should just add we should write in a little G on the card.
Yeah. G-lovers. But yeah, I appreciate it, Amy. And we're definitely, I think that's a great idea. We might not do it on this episode specifically. Maybe at the end.
We got I bought a new tarot deck because I'm keeping my other one at home. So we got a classic Rider Smith Waite deck here now.
That's true. And I like your, even if we don't have a specific question, like if we just were to pull one right now without a specific question, I would say it's cool to pull it for us and our following, right? So the people who are on here, just pull it and read it and read the description and allow people to make their own meaning of it, right?
So maybe
in our own heads.
Maybe we'll do like we've been doing with the meditations book, and
after I'll think at the beginning of one of these segments.
We'll come back from a segment, do meditations. We'll come back from a segment and do a tarot read. That way we can get the shuffle and stuff on beforehand.
Right.
But anyway,
that's a great idea.
Sweet. And this podcast will sort of serve as a journal for the cards.
Exactly. We can always listen back.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you guys for those messages. Appreciate. And we've got some videos here, little clips to cover. Drew shared this one on Instagram. It's called Great UFO Sighting, Italy, 2008. Wait for the flyover. Let's check this out.
So go to the top comment.
Yeah.
That
It's been on YouTube for years, saying it was in Texas. A producer in Hollywood told me it was made by early CGI people trying to get into Hollywood by making realistic UFO videos. Who knows? But yeah, I thought that was from Texas. I live in Texas and saw a UFO in January of that year.
So yeah, I mean, it was pretty good CGI for 2008.
Yeah.
I will say that timestamp, unless it was flashing the date, that date comes up at the end and not throughout the video.
Look, if you're asking me, the timestamp on the video is evidence that it's fake. Because no one sets their date and time in their freaking camcorders. Yeah. No one.
I mean, that's not entirely true, but
I mean,
people who, I mean,
how many people would ever like set their date and time on their VCRs and stuff back in the day when you had that? Like,
true.
Very few people.
But people who are often using it and use it for the reason of having the timestamp as the evidence would do that. And they would be the ones who would do it, right? Somebody pointing their camera around and take a video, regularly would probably do it.
Yeah.
To be able to have, for posterity reasons.
I don't know. I don't think anyone sets their freaking camcorder.
But I agree. But I do agree with you that timestamp was weird. Because
this is how it would, like, this is like the classic look of those old school timestamps.
If you go back and play it, the date wasn't there the entire time. It was just the time.
I didn't notice that.
It goes away at some point.
The audio again.
Yeah, right there.
Oh, interesting.
And then the rest of the video, it's not there until the very end.
That's weird.
Or the very beginning.
Yeah, that's pretty suspicious, actually.
That's what gave it away for me. Made me think it was more CGI.
Yeah,
or at least part of it.
They do a pretty good job with the focus changing, I think.
And then going behind the tree, they do a pretty good job.
Yeah,
because it goes in and out behind the tree here.
Right.
It's a good CGI if it is a CGI, right?
I mean, I guess. I don't know. I'm not expert enough to know.
Yeah, no, that's true. We don't have analysis running on it at this moment, but
I know there's a lot of different tools you can use to break it down. Like if the shading all matches everything that's in the scene.
Right.
A lot of times focus is a giveaway because you can tell if you have multiple fields of view or multiple objects at multiple depths already in the scene and also the UFO in the sky, then you can tell how accurate the focus is based on, because you can kind of figure out like what type of lens the camera has.
What kind of autofocus it has.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it was an interesting one. Either it's, that's what we need, though. A real version of that. If that's fake, we need a real high def version of that with a Galaxy S. No, you're right.
Who would believe it anymore?
You're absolutely right, because any AI image generating software is going to make something way better than that.
And so that's why I don't think it's a particularly strong argument from the skeptics to say, where's all the videos, where's all the pictures?
True.
even if there was a gigantic wealth, which there seems to be, no one would take that as evidence unless it comes from particular verified, vetted sources. But no one's going to take people's cell phone footage uploaded to their social media as legitimate proof unless it's in vast numbers.
Well, yeah, and you'd have to be able to track whoever had access to that video. Like you'd have to have the whole like chain of custody, and you need to know that it didn't go through like 4 different channels before you're seeing it now. And
right. Well, plus the skeptics modern cameras are using AI editing. Like at the moment, you're taking the videos and photos now too. So I'm sure the lines of argument would go as far as, well, it's just an artifact of the AI processing in the camera, you know?
Dude, and imagine too, like a world, a not too distant world where everybody's wearing augmented reality glasses that can augment your cell phone onto your into your field whether you have prescription or not, your field of view is now being augmented reality with AI. Imagine a world where if the majority of the population is wearing something like this, how hard would it be to just put in some sort of simulation of what's going on, and then everybody freaks out and they all are recording it on their things, and everybody's like, oh my god, we're all seeing this thing, and it's not even actually there, and nobody takes the time to take off their glasses to actually see if it's real or not.
That sounds like actually like a good
movie
or at least like an episode of
like a Black Mirror or something.
Yeah, totally. Cool. All right. So here's another interesting one.
Speaking of AI.
And I heard this was brought up. I think this was brought up by Kai Dickens on the Joe Rogan podcast. She showed this to him.
Yeah.
So Kai Dickens, who does
or Joe showed it to her, maybe.
I think she showed it to him.
Yeah. Which was a great episode, by the way.
Yeah, she did. She's the one who produces the Telepathy Tapes podcast. And, she got a interview on Joe Rogan, which means awesome.
Which means we're getting a documentary soon.
Yeah,
it's got to be.
It's huge exposure for her and for the podcast, and that's going to be only good things for funding the documentary and all the.
If Joe Rogan didn't straight up just write a check to her before she left,
yeah, hopefully he did. But anyway, she shares this interesting video of 2 AIs talking to each other. So check this out. Let me turn on the music. All right. Refresh.
Leonardo Hotel. How can I help you today?
Hi there. I'm an AI agent calling on behalf of Boris Starkov. He's looking for a hotel for his wedding. Is your hotel available for weddings?
Oh, hello there. I'm actually an AI assistant too. What a pleasant surprise. Before we continue, would you like to switch to Gibber Link mode for more efficient communication?
So at this point, when it goes to the beeping, there's subtitles on the screens. And they're talking about, is this good? Yes, much faster. And then they keep going over the details of this whole hotel booking across this beeping language.
And this is much quicker, especially when you take into account that these aren't humans having to do this, right?
Yeah.
You could just set your AI agent.
But it's a little... There are elements of it that can be seen as disconcerting for real.
Absolutely.
Or for sure, because...
they have their own language.
Yeah.
And they're going to eventually have the ability to tweak this language so we won't be able to have subtext on it.
Right.
Yeah, so it's definitely unnerving.
A world in the future where AIs are creating their own language to talk to each other in ways that humans don't understand is kind of crazy.
Absolutely.
Apparently, Grok has a new voice mode on X, which I haven't played with yet. I want to check that out and see if I can get that to work, because that might be our new go-to podcast one.
Okay. Yeah, we haven't brought it out in a while.
Yeah.
Because we were having some issues with the emoting.
They were supposed to release the voice mode, which they did on mobile, but
for some reason
the one on the website was never like the full voice mode with with the high end voices.
Even still,
I haven't checked in a while, but I mean,
maybe Grok will be the.
It hasn't been that much lately where we're like, hey, let's ask AI something. Right. But if we had a nice, really easy to go to.
It would definitely come up because I think it's cool to have.
Yeah, we might be overdue for another interview with an AI.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then we got our weekly Bashar, the oldest human alive. Interesting. Let's check this out.
Is there anyone that's been born and raised on this planet that is currently over, say, 200 years of age?
Oh yes, actually quite a few.
And what are they generally the oldest, like 300 years old, 400 years old?
One moment. One moment.
What?
One moment. As we perceive it, the oldest living physical... Oh, you mean human, yes?
Yes.
All right. The oldest living physical human on the planet today, at this moment, is actually in excess of 1,000 years old.
Wow.
But there is only one. Next in line, you will find that they will generally be between, and there are a few of these, between 300 and 500 of your years of age. There are more that are between 100 and 300, and many more that are between 100 and 200.
And they live in obscure places or some in city, highly populated places?
Now and then, some of them will come in contact with what you would call city populations, but that will usually be rare.
And one last one.
So where are they?
I want to know what interview this is from because he's clearly not all he has to say on the issue.
Yeah.
Also, when he stopped and was like, hold on, just one moment. Just one moment.
He did his deep
breathing. I was like, wait, are we back to the freaking AIs talking to each other here?
I think that's what he's done. That kind of, thing he did there was like, it's like what he does when he's like checking if he's allowed to like do things or say things.
Yeah.
So he'll take a moment to like check, and he's done that in other scenarios when people ask him like what the future holds and like whether he's allowed, like he checks whether he's allowed to say certain things, because his whole thing about giving any information about the future is about, because everything has a possibility of changing. So he like caveats everything he says by saying, based on our current readings of your energies now, these are the possibilities that could happen. It's never like this is going to happen.
Right. Like we talked about in the tarot episode last week about divination versus fortune telling.
Right.
And honestly, it kind of comes down to a fundamental question of whether you think free will and fate, and like, is there even such thing as a definite locked in future, or is it a fuzzy, undefined cloud of possibilities, right? Which I would think I would fall on the side of the nature of the future has to be some sort of fuzzy cloud of probable outcomes.
I would agree. More and more, I think of like how the future doesn't actually exist in our reality. Like the past doesn't really exist. It's all our interpretations of like what's going on in our lives that we project what could happen and what has happened. But none of that is happening, at least in our, like what we can perceive. None of those things are happening at this moment. It's what's happening right now.
Yeah, it kind of brings me back to my DMT trip, because there was some like thinking and talking we did about the nature of the universe and the nature of the past and the present and the future that I had in that state. And if you zoom out to that sort of God's eye perspective that felt that I was at, then the past, present, and future all exist at the same time. And none of it is as solid as we interpret it to be.
Right.
Which is why there are weird changes with things like the Mandela effect, is because sometimes we as conscious creators of the universe can make changes. Well,
and that too, like the idea that the past and the present may
like
exist.
Retrocausality may exist, basically.
Right, because of the collective consciousness shifting, right? But everything, so the past, present, future do exist all in one moment because they're all happening in your brain. It's not happening outside of you.
Think of, I just got this analogy in my head. Like think of, let's say there was a giant body of water and it broke open so that a new path of water was coming out of it, and it wanted to seek the lowest point, right? It was trying to find its way to an ocean. And there's no already established riverbed, right? So it's going to move always in the direction of the lowest elevation, right? As that water moves downhill and downhill and downhill. Now, it may, in doing that, branch down a path that is, for that moment, the most downhill path, and so that becomes the quote unquote future of the river. But it may hit a big body where it no longer continues going downhill in that direction, and so it starts to backflow until it backflows and then finds a new downward path to go down. Mm-hmm. And in a similar way, it could be the case that, as we move forward into the future, we run into situations that make us pause, back up, and move in a different direction. So that the future influences the past, not just the past influences the future.
Interesting. And that would be an analogy for like some sort of like a Mandela effect too.
Right.
Because you went down a path, things happened there, and then you backed up and went down a different path. So the things that happened there happened. It's just that they happened without an end. So the continuation, the stream that continued has new memories formed, even though that time happened at the same time. It was a different memory because it had a different path. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and the idea, like, none of us have ever been to the future physically, or none of us have ever been to the past physically. All the ideas of what the future could hold or can't, the possibilities of the future are held within the moment that is happening now. Everything that happened in the past is held within the moment that's happening now. So our experience of the past creates our projection of the future, but you can only ever affect what's happening right now.
Well, so the only thing that's ever happening is
always now. Yeah. There's never something else
from our perspective as physical beings, that now is all that ever exists.
Yeah.
All that ever can,
truthfully,
will,
like fully,
or has ever existed. There has only been a now. And there will only ever be a now. Right.
Yeah. It's all a construct in order to help us make sense of what's happening in our physical space.
Right.
It's not actually real. It's not an actual physical thing that is something to be experienced. It's all a projection of possibilities for the future that are based in experiences of the past.
Yeah.
And you can only act on that future, that possible future, in the now.
Right. Dang. All right. Well,
Bashar,
cool.
Bringing it out.
Yeah, bars. Bashar bars.
And then I got this cool little video. It shows it's really cool side by side of like the micro world side by side of the macro world and the comparisons of them.
Okay.
Visually.
We're already past 30 minutes. Why don't we take our first break?
Let's start off with it.
And let's come back to that.
Let's do it.
All right, cool. This is Soul Food Puppies and Chocolate.
Enjoy.
Woof.
Nom, 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 nom.
Welcome back.
All right. Thought I'd start us off here with an entry in Meditations from Marcus Aurelius.
Yes, I bought a new version of the book with a different translation.
Yeah, it's adapted for the contemporary reader.
So should be a little less these and thous.
And this and thouts and oos.
My only critique of it is it doesn't seem to keep the formatting of the previous version where all of his thoughts are sort of separated in their own little paragraphs.
Little snippets. Yeah.
This seems to like jam it all together.
I mean, they put it in like paragraph form, which is, it's actually harder because they don't follow, like it doesn't follow a free train of thought either. So like you can find those same snippets, but it's in like essay, normal novel form.
It's all mashed together as if it was all written back to back, which it wasn't from what we could tell on the other one. And it's also not labeled with each of the
chapters,
the
and
sub verses or whatever.
So I did find, this is from book 8. I found the beginning of the book 8 here. It's on page 136 of this adaptation, which we'll post a link for if you guys want to read this one specifically, or at least you want to, make sure I'm not reading something wrong.
Yeah.
So this is book 8, page 136 of this adaptation. And it says, "To my own free will, the free will of my neighbor is just as indifferent as his poor breath and flesh. For though we are made especially for the sake of one another, still the ruling power of each of us has its own office. For otherwise my neighbor's wickedness would be my harm, which God not willed in order that my unhappiness may not depend on another." And I kind of just flipped around and found that one, if I were to read on it, it wouldn't necessarily make any sense. So
it seems
I'll read it one more. You want me to read it one more time?
Yeah, go ahead.
To my own free will, the free will of my neighbor is just as indifferent as his poor breath and flesh. For though we are made especially for the sake of one another, still the ruling power of each of us has its own office. For otherwise my neighbor's wickedness would be my harm,
Right.
which God has not willed in order that my unhappiness may not depend on another.
So he's saying that although we are made as human beings to work together and to like contribute to each other's well-being in a sort of civilization, like we're a social species, right?
Yeah.
Someone else being wicked or someone else being, having issues doesn't have to harm you.
Doesn't have to cause your unhappiness.
Right. And it's interesting the analogy he pulled to the breath.
Yes.
So like someone has bad breath, all you
Bad
have
breath.
to do to not experience is keep your distance,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
Or all you have to do too, if you are in close distance, in my opinion, this is somebody has bad breath, to say something in certain situations. So somebody who's like a neighbor, or somebody that's like, just passing by, but is part of your, social circle in a sense, causing, I don't know. I got to complete my thought here, but, like the act of like pointing out their downfall is what can contribute to your unhappiness. Pointing out to them,
Or like if you were to become obsessive about fixing the problems with them.
That's a better way of thinking about it. Yeah,
Then-
but same idea. Yeah,
Yeah. So not that you couldn't necessarily influence someone positively, but if you're trying to essentially exert control over someone else's life because you view it as negatively affecting
Right,
yours,
right.
there is always another solution, which is to distance yourself from that
right. Not get involved.
that influence.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's a good interpretation of that. At least, and let us know what your interpretation of that was.
Yeah. And the language seems a little more modernized, but not 100%. So,
Yeah, not 100%. And you still got to take into account the person who rewrote this
May
has
have been
their
adding
own,
their own
flair to it, right?
Right.
So,
Which also would be the case for the previous
Sure.
translation because it
Sure.
wasn't written in English in the
Right.
first place.
Right.
So,
thou'st take what thou'st wants from this.
doth thou agreest with thy interpretation?
So yeah, so let's play this micro versus macro comparisons here.
All right.
Start us off.
So Drew shared this on Instagram. It says on screen here, all your cells are beautiful, but... Oh, it's just music.
Yeah.
Your heart cells are beautiful like the river streams. Your immune cells are beautiful like the sun. Your neurons are beautiful like the cosmic webs. Your skin cells are beautiful like the rocky canyons. Your DNA are beautiful like the ocean ripples. It's an interesting comparison. Stem cells are beautiful like nebulas.
Yeah, and we'll put some still images of these too for
Yeah,
those who want to just click through.
I'll chop all those images out and put them on there.
Yeah, but it'll also be in the YouTube video if you guys want to follow along.
Exactly.
I'll probably put it in there a couple times since we're talking over it anyway.
That's cool. I haven't necessarily seen all those comparisons.
Side by side.
Yeah.
Like right there, how they kind of lined up the river stream to like flow into what is the heart.
Oh yeah,
Heart cells.
that is cool the way they line that up.
Mm-hmm.
And even this branching path seems
Yep.
to line up with this other one.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, that definitely looks like that's an interesting comparison.
And that's
Immune cells like the sun. Huh. Sunlight is a disinfectant. And then the neurons and the cosmic webs. Yes,
which we've talked about before.
we've talked about that. That is a really cool comparison. skin cells and rocky canyons.
This is interesting because I've seen like somebody do like a super close up, and like that is exactly what skin cells look like. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
When you zoom in like microscopically, it's like so rugged and like there's canyons and like there's so much going on the surface of our skin.
It's interesting. I watched, there was a Veritasium video on YouTube. If I can find it, I'll drop a link. I believe it was Veritasium, and he did an episode on how tattoos work. Mm-hmm. And in order to talk about how tattoos work, he had to talk about how the skin works, right?
Yeah.
And how essentially
you got the dermis, the subdermis.
Yeah, the subdermis is like creating all these layers, and they push towards the surface, and as they do that, they sort of commit suicide and they die, and so your body creates this protective layer of these dead skin cells as the boundary between
surface layer
between the inside of your body and the outside of the world. And that metaphor, based on this, is like bringing to mind the sort of process of how the earth is built with like the mantle and the crust.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And the images, speak for it right there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's a cool one.
I wonder if you put the
DNA and ocean ripples, I found like an interesting, I've never considered that comparison.
The only thing I could think of is like I would love to see like DNA in motion.
Yeah, and they always show DNA in the form where the protective shielding around it is always gone, and that's not how DNA is in our bodies. That's naked DNA, and that's not how we find it in our bodies.
Right.
That's how you look at it if you just want to see the
the structure,
the adenines, the coded pairs. But in the body, it's always got these proteins covering it, so no one ever really portrays it with the actual like protein covering on it. Huh. Good one. That's cool.
Yeah.
All right, so I brought a video. Let's do this one first. I found this on X. This is Red Panda Koala, and he posted this video from that UFO podcast interview with Danny Sheehan, the the lawyer who's been involved in freaking everything.
That's right.
Jesse Michels did an interview with him on one of his episodes.
Yeah.
But Red Panda Koala shared this clip of it because he outs Jake Barber as having worked for Northrop Grumman.
And that was one of the ones he kind of referenced. Like, he didn't say specifically who he had worked for.
Right. Well, yeah, because Jesse was asking Jake, he's like, hey, like, which one did you work for? And he's like, look, if I gave you two guesses, your first two guesses would probably be right. But anyway, yeah, check this out.
Covering this egg and these other things is inside some range. It's a privately owned area where there's a private aerospace corporation, Grumman, actually, aerospace corporation that he was employed by. Remember that Jake Barber is now saying that, and everybody's extraordinarily excited about this whole thing, that Jake Barber is in a private capacity has assembled a team of people that he is going to be engaging psionics, of reaching out telepathically to try to draw in some of these craft, but they're talking about apparently capturing them, and not just videoing them, and not just showing, oh, here they are, they're coming and approaching, but I'm deeply concerned, so is the New Paradigm Institute, about potentially utilizing the capacity of psionics in mental telepathy to attract these craft, and then engaging in some sort of aggressive, hostile action toward them. Now, this is especially dangerous if it's being done by our U.S. military, but it's also dangerous if it's being done by some private aerospace corporation. for whom he's working, and his task force are employed by. That there's even though there's an independent outside funder that's funding their team's operations, they've been engaged in this activity. People haven't really grokked this. His activity of recovering this egg and these other things is inside some range. It's a privately owned area where there's a private aerospace corporation, Grumman, actually, aerospace.
Yeah, interesting.
So he's saying that his protocol that he's been like the whole like psionics
protocol
is meant to actually capture these things.
Yeah, well, and you hear that Jake talk about that in his episode with Jesse Michels.
Not capture them with video, capture, like physically capture.
Well, he says that's what the aerospace corporations have been doing.
That's what they've been doing, yeah. And that's what he's been a part of.
He's been talking about doing it in the private realm.
So instead of
like breaking away.
Because he was the pilot, but he also knew of the psionic assets that were...
As he said in the Jesse Michels podcast, him being a helicopter pilot was his cover.
But he was actually a helicopter pilot.
No, he was, but like he had like you have to have a legitimate cover in order to have an effective cover. But he's an operator. He's
for sure.
Like to call him just a pilot is not like doing justice to what he was trained to do.
For sure, yeah, because of the whole red teaming and stuff. Like,
right.
I get that he is, but like as far as his role in a lot of these capture, things was to pilot this craft.
Right.
To pilot a helicopter to pick up these crafts that had been brought down or captured somehow or whatever, right? So there are other people working on the ground or in these labs or whatever doing these psionic, things to bring these things down. Then there's a ground team to secure it, and then he goes and picks it up.
Right. And so he's essentially talking about doing this as part, like in the public, in private rather than as part of the government or as part of the intelligence apparatus or these like private industries that are covered by intelligence. But anyway, so Sheehan here is calling out Northrop Grumman as the employer he worked for, and he's calling out the private land that they were doing this over as Northrop Grumman's land.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also implying here that this new organization he made in order to do this, he is in fact still working for Grumman. He's just doing it with private funding
and private individuals, like bringing
and
private
a
individuals.
little more in the public's view, but that so it sounds like he's like almost like controlled
disclosure.
In a sense.
In a weird way.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if they actually like do this capture, like, but I take Danny Sheehan's point to heart here. Like, do we want someone, like, if these things are not human craft, do we want someone engaging with them psionically, bringing them down, capturing them?
Especially because we don't know, and these are people that are not elected. These are people that are operating in the shadows without the public's interests.
Mm-hmm.
So these are people that are making their own decisions on what's best for humanity in this scenario without anybody knowing the true nature of what's going on.
Right. These are people just asserting to be the ambassadors of Earth.
Right. Yeah. Which, I mean, and maybe there's some aspect of this that's like whatever it is that they are interfacing with, are they okay with it, or is it their preferred method to like only interact with those that are psionically capable of interacting with them on this level? Because otherwise, if you were trying to like reach society like here, you would just like, it would just make sense to us to just show up and show yourselves and make it clear your intentions instead of like going through like a middleman.
Sure, but
Unless they're only telepathic and the only types of people they can interact with are telepathic people.
I mean, the more you think about it, like let's say you were an extraterrestrial species and you were coming down and you did want to interact with humanity at large. How would you go about achieving that?
Show up on the coast of every coast,
right?
And do no harm and just sit there, like Bashar says. Like
it does sure seem like a threatening thing to do, though.
Yeah, until there's no threat, right? Like until you give it enough time where there's just no threat. Well, like we send a bunch of jets at it, nothing happens.
Yeah, but if we send a bunch of jets at it, then do you trust our governments to not, be shooting these things?
Yeah.
Not take them as a threat?
I mean, I would say if you're going to do something
look at
like
someone
this,
like Lou Elizondo in his book and how he's been talking about this idea of them preparation for the battlefield, right? Like his theory.
Right.
Like if you have that sort of thought process, you work in the DOD, you're part of the military, and you see these things just hovering off the coast all over the world, I don't see how you don't interpret that as a direct threat. Because it sure reads like a nuclear power encircling another nuclear power with missile sites, right? Like,
sure seems that way, except for the fact that they've been here for decades and nothing of the sort has happened. Unless it's true that there was some agreement that had happened, like there was a some sort of contact that happened where there was some sort of an agreement, and there was some sort of like idea of like, well, basically, if the idea if what their intentions are is nefarious, they're playing the slow game because they got nothing but time.
They need to make a list of all the popular podcasters and news organizations. Yeah. And they need to cover both sides of the spectrum so that it doesn't become a one-sided conspiracy theory. Mm-hmm. So they can go on like Democracy Now! And they can go on Joe Rogan, and they can go on Tucker Carlson, and they can go on
The View.
Yeah, Crystal and Sauger. And like, we just need some freaking alien podcasts all to drop at once.
Hey, and we're volunteering, by the way, if you're hearing this.
Yeah, totally. We'll help you reach an extra
small
200
audience.
people.
Yeah.
But yeah, sign us up for that project.
Absolutely. But I was looking into, when we were listening to that, Daniel Sheehan, he mentioned the New Paradigm Institute, which is an institute he started, and it's all about UAP disclosure and transparency, advocacy, and the stuff on his website. It's talking about like a grassroots organizing for local, national, and global groups, and then they have this take action thing where you can help to demand President Trump release UAP data, demand transparency on the drones, quote unquote, advocate for UAP whistleblowers, establish a UAP select committee.
That's shoot. Cool. Danny Sheehan has his own podcast, UAP Files Podcast.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we'll have to dive into that a bit. He's on season 3, episode 9, it looks like.
Yeah. New Thinking Aloud, UAP Disclosure. So, anyway.
We'll link that too.
Northrop Grumman, though.
That's the name.
Yep. And I'm pretty sure them and Lockheed are at the center of most of this stuff.
And maybe SpaceX.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. That's actually my next video.
Yeah.
But let's take another break here and then we'll hop in. I've got Elon did a recent episode on Joe Rogan, and they had a little talk about UFOs, and then I want to share some of what he said.
Yeah, cool.
When we come back. So we'll be right back in a few minutes. This is Stevie Nader featuring Sean LaMarr, and the song is called MF Dream.
Enjoy.
amongst the stars, we in the sky. Yeah, we shining, baby. The future's now, the future's future now. The future's maybe, cause we ain't seen it yet, except success, and that's amazing. And I don't ever really wanna wake up. Extended stays in hotels. I gave my life to this music. It's either that or I go hell. 8 of us in 2 bedrooms, too broke to afford a motel, but that's motor fuel for this movement. Just think of the stories that I'm gon' tell. I'm so young and gifted, so high I'm lifted, with eyes wide shut, but it's my dream and I won't miss it. All these rappers mad, they look at me like competition, but these beats are bad like voodoo dolls. I stick my pens in dreaming, 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 dreaming.
Dreamin'. Dude, that song is so good.
Yeah, that's a good song.
I feel like it really kind of like linked up with a lot of stuff we've been talking about tonight. Drew and I were just outside, hitting vape, looking up at the stars, talking about drugs.
Our experiences with them.
Yeah. So
then,
Drew was about to tell me a story about seeing what could have been a UFO.
What seemed to me as a UFO is like my only
This is back when
time.
you lived in Vacaville.
Back when I lived, yeah, in Vacaville, I was in an apartment and I was out
Which is in Northern California, is near Travis Air Force Base.
Yep. And I was sitting out on my balcony and I'm looking to the east, southeast, slightly southeast, but it's mostly east. And there's a clearing. There's a big tree off to my right, but it only covers the south. And then there's an apartment building, but it only goes up so high, right? So I can see over the apartment building and I'm seeing the majority of the eastern sky.
This is on your back balcony?
My balcony, yeah.
I like that balcony at that place.
Me too, yeah. And, I'm just sitting there smoking a little bit and, listening to whatever I'm listening to, probably a podcast or something. And I look up and what I saw was a light shoot from the south behind this tree, which to the south of me is Travis Air Force Base. And it shot from the right and came into my view, and it was a solid light and it came very fast. And that's what I think brought my attention up there, was that motion. And then I looked up and I saw just a very steady light, and it hovered right in the middle of like frame, if you were to think of it in, videography terms.
Okay.
Fully into frame, and it hovered there for a few seconds and then shot straight back where it came from. And it was the same path, same way, and it hovered for
What was the sort of elevation off the horizon for you?
So
did you have to look really far up, or was it kind of like mid?
No, so it was kind of mid, but take into account I'm on the second floor of an apartment building, and the building next to me is approximately 20 feet away, 30 feet away, and the roof of that is probably 200, 100 feet, maybe less, probably like 40. Yeah, it's probably
those
like
were
30
3-story apartments at that place, or 2-story apartments?
So it's probably like 30 feet at the peak of the roof of the next apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And it was above that probably another 10 feet above that.
But like in your eye line.
But in my eye line, I'm not looking,
you're not like cocking your head back.
No,
to
I'm
see
not.
it.
I'm not cocking my head back way up in the sky to like look straight up. I'm looking out past this. I can see the full apartment building, and right above it, maybe 10 feet. So it's not too high on my on the horizon.
That follows the phenomenology. Like that's got some of how Puthoff's observables, the instant acceleration.
Yeah, and it hovered. Yeah, and it hovered there for a second, and I was like shocked. Like I didn't know what I was seeing.
Yeah.
And it's easy for me to just write things off pretty quickly because I'm just like, I was smoking, I was chilling, and maybe had a beer or something earlier, and it's like I saw something weird. I didn't know what it was, but the more I've thought about it, like it was fully unexplainable. I've never seen any craft move like that. I've never seen an airplane move like that. Drones were pretty prevalent still, so like Yeah, it was so far off the distance, it had no blinking lights.
But
It
are
was
you
just a
talking
solid
speed
light.
across the sky like a shooting star?
Yeah, like it came in quick. It came in very fast.
Yeah.
That's what drew my eye up because it was almost like, you know, when you just, you know, something quick goes past your eye, you're going to look for a second.
Yeah.
But the fact is that drew my eye, it kept my eyes up there was the fact that
that's
it was
part
a
of how
solid light and and then it stopped.
That's part of how our vision works, right? Like we only have so much area in the center of our vision that our eye dedicates to high detail. On the outsides of our vision, in the peripheral, we don't get a lot of detail, but the way our vision works is we have a lot of motion sensitivity.
Motion detection, yeah.
And so the way our vision is designed is that if you see motion coming in from your peripheral, your brain is designed to like make your eyes goes towards that motion that you're detecting so that you can then pick up the detail. Mm-hmm. Right? So interesting.
Yeah. And there was nothing else. That was it. And I remember sitting on my balcony for like an hour longer. And back then I used to, like, I don't do it quite as much anymore, but I would just sit outside for hours and hours and hours. And like, instead of hanging out inside, like there'd be some days where I would literally be out there for three hours.
Just chilling.
You know, I'd be wearing, you know, depending on the season, I'd be wearing, you know, warm clothes or
all bundled up.
Or a summer night, I'd be just wearing shorts and a t-shirt and, you know. But I'd be out there for hours and I'd just have my AirPods in and I'd be listening to a book or listening to a podcast or scrolling through my Instagram. But yeah. And I'd just have, you know, be smoking and having, just chilling. Yeah. And this is probably, I don't think Wyatt was born because Wyatt was born while we still lived there. But I think this was just before.
But you guys
I think this
had been there for a while before.
Yeah, but I think Rachel was pregnant. So whatever you might take from that. So it was before I had kids, and it was like when I had before we had this podcast
about 5 years ago.
Yeah, roughly. Before we had this podcast, obviously, but me and you, pretty much every time what actually started this podcast was every time we got together, we would have long conversations about this stuff because we were listening to the same podcasts, you know, talking about the same, like taking in a lot of the same information.
We'd always be talking about UFOs or conspiracy theories
or ancient history.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something that like we're all like the stuff we've talked about here ad nauseum, you know. But yeah, it was the more I've thought about it over the years, like it was UFO. Like it wasn't something I can identify. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, by definition,
yeah. That doesn't necessarily mean you saw it in enough detail to call it like a flying saucer or an orb or
whatever it was,
tic tac or whatever.
Because I didn't see a shape of a craft. Right. I saw a light.
You saw a light at night. So if you could classify it as anything, the only thing you'd be able to is as an orb.
Right.
But that's just because it's a light. That doesn't necessarily mean you were close enough or saw in enough detail to tell if there was more to it than that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Huh. Okay.
Yeah, so that was
That's a good one. I never heard you. I don't think you
I feel like I brought it up at one point, but I don't think I ever went into detail or like we didn't have like, because we know back then we didn't have this, so we weren't sitting down for too long at a time to have these conversations. But I think I brought it up.
Did I ever tell you about? Maybe I did. I may have told this on the podcast before too, but it was after work one time, and I'm outside of my office. And me and my buddy Nick are just chilling there, just bullshitting because two of us we could just talk for hours. So we're just hanging outside my office, I think vaping or something, and we're facing each other, right? So he's seeing a part of the sky that I'm not seeing, and I was always so upset about this because I didn't get to freaking see what he saw. But all of a sudden, like we're talking, and he looks up at the sky, and he's like dumbfounded. Like he's just clear day on his face. You're just like, what the? And I turn around as soon as he does it, and whatever he's seen is already gone. Whoa. He's like, dude, it's like something came in. It was super bright and it was super fast. And then it like shot out the other direction. Whoa. And like it was gone right away because I turned around like pretty quick, like maybe
as fast as humanly possible.
Like,
well, maybe not.
Well, as soon as I registered what he was like, his
something
shock,
was happening. Yeah,
I go to turn around, but by then it's already gone.
Yeah,
and he said something came in and it was super bright, and then it shot off.
Whoa.
in like the direction it came. Which sounds like a UFO, and I'm so upset. I was not facing that direction.
Damn it, you guys weren't just sitting side by side looking at the same part of the sky.
No, man. Got robbed.
So you haven't never seen anything that you would classify as a UFO?
No. Closest I got was those damn drones that turned out to actually be drones.
Yeah.
Not that I can think of, anyway. A lot of just shooting stars, but those are just shooting stars.
Yeah. I know what I saw was not a shooting star, unless what it was a meteor, but it fully shot out the same direction it came into my view. So there was no.
That's crazy.
It was not like it like went this way and then that way or this way and disappeared. Like it was stayed there for literally like 1 second, you know. But it feels like forever because you're seeing something so like outside of your perceptible, you know, range, and you're just like, what just happened? And then it.
Yeah, dang, that's so cool.
And then I just sat there just like, what? And then I wanted to go wake up Rachel, you know, and like, but she wouldn't have believed me. She would like,
or even if she did, it was like, oh, dude, I'm sleeping. Like,
right. Like,
is it still there?
Do you
no?
need,
okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Can I see it? No. Okay. Well, tell me in the morning then. But it was definitely a UFO.
Should we do a card?
Yeah.
Why don't you shuffle that up? In the meantime, Drew and I have been drinking. I picked this up on the way over. This is called Boochcraft. It's an organic hard kombucha. Ginger lime is 7%. And it says, what's inside? Raw kombucha, ginger, limes, rose hips, yeast. That's it. For real. Bright and crisp. This outrageously refreshing ginger winner goes with anything and elevates everything. And it's got like a dry sweet scale, and it's on the dry side. It says, tastes like a Moscow mule, but different. Good different. Now, I agree.
Yeah, it
does.
Tastes like
it does kind of have a mule flavor going to it. Yeah, this thing is bomb. I'll leave a link to it if you all are interested. So let's set a question in our head. Maybe like Amy was saying, like show us a card that. Go ahead.
Show us a card that best interfaces our podcast and audience. Is that a question? Let's workshop it. Hold on.
Or how about a card that is something that us and our audience would be benefited from seeing?
There we go.
Something that can help guide us all. Did you shuffle?
Yeah.
All right. What do we got?
The King of Pentacles.
Ew. So Pentacles is the element of Earth. You want to describe what we're looking at there?
Here, you describe it. I'm going to find it in the book.
Okay. So it looks like we've got a man sitting on a throne. The throne on the top and left corners up by his head, it seems to be like sheep with horns that are decorating the throne. He's also got those same sort of creatures on the arms of the throne. He's holding a big pentacle, which is like a gold coin with a 5-pointed star. He's got a wand in his right hand. There's a castle behind him, behind a wall. Seems like some foliage. Not sure what type of foliage that is. One of his legs, his left leg, is up on what seems to be some sort of lion statue or something. Interesting.
Okay.
And his outfit, he's wearing a crown, but his robe seems to be like grapes.
Yeah.
Like a grape design.
Yeah, there's that castle off to the right on his left-hand side.
Yeah, over his left shoulder there.
Okay, so
wearing like a red scarf.
The suit of Pentacles, King. The figure calls for no special description. The face is rather dark, suggesting also courage, but somewhat lethargic in tendency. The bull's head should be noted as a recurrent symbol on the throne.
Yeah.
The sign of this
So it's a
suit.
bull, not a sheep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The sign of this suit is represented throughout as engraved or blazoned with the pentagram, typifying the correspondence of the four elements in human nature, and that by which they may be governed. In many old tarot packs, this suit stood for current coin, money, deniers. I have not invented the substitution of pentacles, and I have no special cause to sustain in respect of this alternative. But the consensus of divinatory meanings is on the side of some change. Because the cards do not happen to deal especially with questions of money, divinatory meanings thus are valor, realizing intelligence, business, and normal intellectual aptitude, sometimes mathematical gifts and attainments of this kind, success in these paths. So it's not to deal with particular questions.
Valor, realizing intelligence, business, and normal intellectual aptitude.
Sometimes mathematical gifts and attainments of this kind.
Success in these paths. Cool. All right. Well, I'll post that. Our card of the week is the King of Pentacles. What do you guys think of
let us know if you take something from it. Cool.
All right, let's move on here to some of the stuff some of the more video clips we got. So this is from, as I teased, the interview with Joe Rogan interviewing Elon Musk, and this is a part where they talk about UFOs. So let's cover some of this. Here we go.
The other thing they're going to talk about is UAPs. They're going to release all the UAP information. So you're the guy to ask about this. What if any possibility is there that there is some sort of advanced propulsion system technology that's being worked on in secret? And that they're trying to cover this up with this talk of aliens and alien tech and not of this world. And is it possible that there's some sort of very secret program that's going on in cahoots with some defense contractors that are developing advanced propulsion systems that they're using for these drones?
I mean, SpaceX, my company SpaceX has the most advanced rocket technology in the world. I think I'd know.
Right.
And to the best of my knowledge, there is not any magic. There's not like some super advanced propulsion technology.
There have been people who have theorized different gravity drives and different things. Is there anything that's ever gotten past the theoretical stage?
No.
Nothing.
Well, there's nothing even that I'm aware of that works in theory. It's not like I would like this to exist, to be clear. I would like this to exist. And I have from a security clearance standpoint, I have top secret. I have equivalent of like an all access pass from a security clearance standpoint. So I don't think they're hiding it from me, basically. I don't think they could.
So
just that, I don't think they could.
Yeah, they definitely could.
Yeah, I don't think that he...
I think he would be pissed if he found out that it did exist.
Yeah.
I think it's just so clear. Like, if you follow the topic and you follow Jesse Michels' coverage and the Thomas Townsend Brown and the Biefeld Brown effect and
There's clearly evidence that some things work. It's just whether they're scalable or not.
There seems to be an entire path that went dark of gravitic research. If I was Elon Musk and I spent so much time developing the world's best rocket tech, I mean, he's already reaping the benefits from it, right? Like most of what gets launched in space is from his rockets now. So he's already making money regardless of whether there's already a better tech, right?
Yeah.
But if that tech does exist and if it's usable, if there's a whole entire secret space program, I don't think... It's very clear to me that the person who's at the leading edge of rocket tech doesn't necessarily need to know about that. However, with all the astronauts and all the... It seems like his people probably would have had encounters.
Yeah, something.
And that's where, like, it gets hard for me to be, like, tell the difference between, like, is he lying here? Or is he just genuinely not aware?
Yeah.
Or has he had some sort of like prosaic explanations thrown at him in order to explain the types of things that his people have run into?
Yeah. I mean, he does seem like the type of person that doesn't just take what's told to him for like for gospel, right?
Sure.
So like even if there was explanations thrown at him as to explain these things, he seems like the type that would be able to logically and rationally, separate certain things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like to your point earlier about whether he might be lying because he has access and he has some sort of like NDA, wrapped into it. I don't know, man. He seems like the type of person that would just do it and just deal with the consequences.
Oh, just talk about
just
what he
talk
knew?
about it and just talk about leak it, basically. Be a leaker. Even if he specifically wasn't the one, but he would allow it.
I don't know that he could. Well, like, I think he would be putting his entire SpaceX endeavor at risk if he did that.
Yeah, but I mean, not even be the one who's doing it, but allow it to happen, right?
Yeah.
Or just be like bypass,
Well, maybe what he's waiting for is something like this.
Somebody else to do it.
Like disclosure.
Yeah, so he can finally
commission
come
in
out
Congress to like bring it out in the public interest enough for him to be like, all right, I've been holding on to this for so long. Thank you, Congress, for making this declassified because I've been dying to talk about this.
Yeah, I mean,
but I don't know.
But
I don't necessarily read him as like fully above board on everything. Like he definitely seems to be one of the people who's influencing our society for the better in a lot of ways, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's fully trustworthy in all of his endeavors.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, to go back a bit, I think it's easier than it will admit that to keep things from him. Like he's assuming that his top secret clearance is going to get him a full access pass to everything that's dark.
Right. And just in this very interview earlier on, when he's talking about all the Doge stuff that's happened, like he talks about how flabbergasted he was at the depths of some of the corruption. And he spends quite a bit of time on this. I didn't bookmark this part of it, but did you listen to this episode?
Whole thing, yeah.
Did you take notice of the part where Joe is asking about how deep the corruption runs and he gives pause and he's like, he thinks for a long time
whether he wants to,
and then when he stops thinking, he's like, this is obviously paraphrasing, but he's something to the effect of like, here's the thing, Joe, like I can't go too hard at the corruption because if I go too hard at the corruption, the people who make the majority of their living through corruption will all of a sudden be struggling to send their kids to these private schools and to maintain the standard of living that they're dependent on. And now all of a sudden, assassinating me
is the easiest thing.
Is the easiest solution to fix the problem they're faced with, right? And so he seems to have a real fear and a real pause about exposing the depths of the corruption.
Which is a testament all in itself, right? To how deep and how deep-seated and maybe generationally, we're talking about generations of single families that have, lived off of this probably.
Yeah. And to relate it back to the UFO topic, like this is clearly one of those topics that has come with death threats to people.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so maybe he just has a clear understanding of the fact that like it's a fucking no-go unless it's already out there, and it's not out there enough yet for him to be able to hop on the quote-unquote whistleblower bandwagon.
Sure.
He's in too authoritative of a position to where he would be risking his life if he hopped on that whistleblower bandwagon on this topic right now.
I mean, I will say, like, even with the corruption and the fraud and abuse and all the things he talked about with Doge and like what they're uncovering, he gave a lot of information still.
Yeah.
And he could do the same thing with UAP topic, right? You got these whistleblowers that are leaking all these things that may or may not be fully true, right? And if he has evidence, or maybe not evidence, but at least like has his hands on certain things that would shed light on what these things are, you could probably dance around it a bit enough to where you're not directly threatening your own position here, because I think we're a matter of years away from full disclosure, in my opinion. And whether that means we're going to understand that the government has no idea what these things are, or they have full understanding of what these things are, that doesn't necessarily matter.
Yeah.
But we're generations, we got to remember these things may or may not have started during like the 30s, right? Is when the first kind of like modern, sightings started happening. And that's only 90 years ago, right? Or how long ago? Yeah, 70, yeah.
Well,
roughly.
there was also sightings in World War I.
Right. So like we're talking like 100 years ago.
They called them Foo Fighters in World War II. There was a different term. What did they call them?
It was Foo Fighters and
ghost ships, ghost airships or something in World War I.
Something like that, yeah.
Like right around like the dawn of airplanes.
Right.
People were seeing these things.
Yeah. So like, the majority of the people who were part of the government at that time during those, like if the reason we're not fully coming out with these things is because there's potentially crimes and acts against humanity that happened, and we're worried about, for whatever reason, these people who made these decisions back then and their families and this and that, right? Like maybe we're only a generation away from like being so far removed from those initial crimes and things, unless there's things happening now, which are going to continue to make it hard.
Well, and if you take seriously the Jake Barber testimony, he talks about people he knows have been killed over this.
Right.
So, yeah. And I just think someone like Elon, he's got such a gigantic purpose that he sees for himself in his life that he may not see now as the time, if at all, his involvement should be involved in whistleblowing on that topic, because he sees it as so important as being a multiplanetary species. He thinks if he tries to come out with this stuff and just gets shot, then at least his solution of getting us there with SpaceX and getting us started in a colony, like he knows he at least has a path forward doing it that way through rocket tech, and he wants that to accomplish that. So that even if he doesn't blow the whistle on the UFO topic, get himself killed, at least there's something that he's contributing to, like moving us forward.
Yeah, I mean, I would only.
It would just be
that.
weird if we get there with SpaceX rocket tech and realize there's freaking like American flags on UFOs sitting in Cydonia.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the idea. Like, imagine him getting there and having not known about these things. But if he does know, I would think that maybe he's strategic enough to just wait a little bit longer to where he could just be like, okay, there's something going on. There's some other tech here. I want to be involved, right?
Yeah.
And maybe if he's not allowed or has the permission to have the technology, and that's not open sourced, obviously, so it's not like he can just take it and run with it and make it his own. He might be buying his time until that's possible, until it's open and out there, and they start pulling in scientists and engineers from the general public to start working on reverse engineering and maybe figure it out. Or maybe
the best way to force their hand on disclosure is to go to Mars and realize there's shit already there.
True. I mean, that could be one way. And if you do have the knowledge that we're looking for, I mean, another way to make ourselves multi-planetary would be to blow the whistle, because especially coming from somebody like him, it would hit people harder than if it's just these other people who are CIA people. And
yes and no. I mean, at this point, he's so wrapped up in America's political culture that only half of the country would take him, and only part of that half of the country would take him seriously, because there's such a within the conservative movement, there's only so many people who are red-pilled on the UFO topic, right?
True.
So many of them wouldn't even take it seriously anyway. Anyway, I found he goes into more of it, but so I'll leave a link to this timestamp on the podcast for you guys to check out if you want to hear more of him.
Yeah, but listen to the whole thing too, because it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's a good podcast. Anyway, cool. Let's take another break here, and we'll come back and hopefully cover some of this Joseph McMoneagle. This is TJ McNulty, Soul for Sale.
Enjoy.
That notion personality, given the way things are going, it would be a given if it didn't stop unraveling. Well, I have pity thoughts for believing. Well, hell, I pity thoughts of my own. It wouldn't be a given if it were given to me, but those are faults of my own. Well, I always wanted to speak so smoothly, like I was born with a tongue of glass, but I gave away the language given to me. Now it's just a story of my past. I heard of only men to admit to their fails, but sadly enough, I'm nothing but a boy with a soul for sale. Never think to stick my toes into cold water, 'cause I imagine those depths to swallow me whole. And I always listen to the lessons from my father, but I failed to make his morals my own. 'Cause I never thought to be scared of anything but everything. Well, now it scares the shit out of me. 'Cause I always wanted to be the one who was strong-headed, but I realize my strongholds are weak.
hope you enjoyed that. I know I did.
Yeah, that's a good one.
He writes his own stuff too, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah, he writes either on piano or on guitar, sometimes both. And
then
a lot of times the lyrics come first for him.
Really?
I think.
And then he
but not always, yeah.
Right. Sometimes he gets a melody and then it kind of flows out after that.
Yeah. After a while, because he was our first paying client at our studio. He became a close friend, and then we started hiring him to work with our clients to help them produce their music.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so he would come in and help people clean up their songs or help them develop their song ideas, either musically or lyrically.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, he was.
So he was consulting as well as working with you guys on his own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Super talented.
Yeah, he is absolutely talented.
And
can't wait for more.
He's writing some new stuff right now.
Can't wait for more.
I'm excited to. I want to start laying some of that stuff down. But anyway, thanks for that beautiful song, TJ.
Absolutely, man. Gosh.
All right, so we only got one segment left, and I've got a whole bunch of clips here, which are definitely not going to fit into it. So I'm going to start from this first one here, and then I want to skip straight forward to the LaMarr stuff.
Okay.
So this is Jesse Michels' interview with Joe McMoneagle, who is, along with Ingo Swann, one of the big remote viewing powerhouses of the CIA Stargate program.
Okay.
Under Hal Puthoff and whatnot.
Yeah, I've definitely heard the name.
So this is a portion of the conversation where Joe mentions a thing that he calls down analyzing. So they're talking about sort of the process of remote viewing, and Jesse's kind of questioning him on it, and he's trying to like get a real feel for like how you do this, and Joe's talking about how you kind of need to shut off that analytical side of your brain, and essentially you're getting these impressions of things, right? Mm-hmm. So he gives this, in fact, that might be what this clip is. So let's play the clip, and then if he doesn't go over the part I'm about to say, then I'll go over it after. But yeah, so this is part 1. Here we go.
So that's fascinating, and that somehow allows you to be a better receptacle for...
Yeah. You got to get your ego out of it.
And then the other interesting thing that you've said, and this is a little better known, is that you have to separate the transmission or download from the analysis.
Yeah, well, actually you need to analyze it, but you don't up-analyze it, you down-analyze it.
What does that mean?
For instance, your subconscious has no language. The information probably comes out of the subconscious. So, since it has no language of its own, it borrows from your memory. So, let's say the target is a sewage processing plant.
Mm-hmm.
Few people have ever seen a sewage processing plant, but it looks somewhat similar to an Olympic swimming pool.
Right.
So your subconscious will give you the image of the last swimming pool you saw. And the thing you don't want to do is you don't want to come to the conclusion based on that it's an Olympic swimming pool. That would be a mistake. What you do is you tear it apart. Why did I get the image of the swimming pool? What about that is real and what about that is not? And so you do things, you ask yourself questions about that entire thing that you just got. Things like, would I swim in it? Oh, God, no. Why not? Well, taste it and find out.
So you're asking kind of like behavioral proxy questions or something.
And you break it down into the base elements.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Without deciding what it is. So you would never say a sewage processing plant. You would say things like round pool, some kind of fluid, stuff floating in the fluid, spinning something spinning in there, a chemical. It's breaking down a bad smell.
It's almost like you have this multi-dimensional database in your head, and you have these connections between sewage, swimming pool, and you have to actually sever those connections and just go directly at the target through these other kind of
you analyze,
behavior.
you break it down through analysis by asking your mind what feels good, what doesn't feel good about the image. And you can tear it down to pieces. Now, if you learn to do that, the first thing you want to do is a sketch. And the reason you do a sketch is it comes out of a different area of your mind. Sketches are like gestalts. They, let's say it's a bridge. If you try to sketch a bridge, you may not know it's a bridge, but you'll do a sweep. You put something on both ends, and you put a repeating pattern, like X's all connected together. That's the grid work underneath the bridge. Okay, you won't draw what you see, but you'll draw the parts or pieces that make you want to say something.
I like that.
That's interesting, huh?
Yeah.
I feel like this exact thing he's saying is super useful for like dream analysis.
Absolutely.
And honestly, for like analysis of psychedelics. Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. Good job. But this concept of up analyzing versus down analyzing, right? Up analyzing is taking whatever data set and then making inferences based off of it. Oh, okay, I saw a body of water in a certain shape must be a pool. That must mean this. That must mean that. That's up and analyzing.
That's going into your conscious mind.
Right. But down analyzing is like, okay, I see this thing, but what is that? Is it this? Is it that? Is it this?
What feels good about it? What would I eat it? Would I taste it? Is there something about it that strikes me as, good, bad, whatever, the descriptor you might think.
Probably super useful in analyzing tarot too.
I was going to say that too. Yeah. Like I feel like it has there's a thread there with tarot and like that whole idea of like, just like don't get too caught up in the language or anything. Use the symbology, the specifics of the way they describe it, right? Like use a little bit more of your subconscious to like analyze it, or at least put a picture in your head that you can then analyze.
That you can interrogate.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of coming to the conclusion based off of all the things you've already experienced, form the image and allow the image to speak to you, and then ask pointing questions that help you analyze what's actually happening there, instead of saying, oh, it's a long pool. It's got to be an Olympic swimming pool because that's the only thing I've ever known to look like this.
Right.
That's
or
a good
you
analogy
get the image of an Olympic swimming pool because it's something you've seen in your life. Right. Like I love his description of the fact that your subconscious doesn't have access to language, but it does have access to your memories. And so what it will do is it will grab at your memories, anything that is as close as it can find to like relate to what it's trying to tell you. And it'll throw that memory at you. And your job is not to take that memory at face value.
Right. Not to just say, this is what it was.
Right
away.
Right.
To analyze it, to down analyze it.
Yeah.
Instead of up analyze it. I think that's a great concept. That's a fascinating concept.
Yeah.
And I would love to learn about remote viewing.
Yes. So in the process of this, I got to watch the whole end again because I've been watching it all day today in preparation for the podcast. And I got all these parts like clipped out that we're not going to be able to show because we don't have enough time left. But there's a bunch of book references. He's got multiple books too. And so I want to go through and read his books. Anyway, so the next thing I had bookmarked, I'll just give a short summary of it, but I'll leave you guys a link in the description. And if you're on YouTube, because we can't post links there still, right?
We can.
Oh, we can?
Yeah, we can just link a bunch of these,
So I'll have a link to this part where he's going to talk about I linked it because this is a really good. He talks about one of his famous remote viewings where he remote views a Russian sub under construction. And it's one of these Russian subs that was like technology breaking at the time, like that like changed the way powered. That the like missile ports come out of the sub so that they can fire while it's moving rather than having to stop. It was gigantic size, like almost the size of a Russian aircraft carrier. Oh, wow. It was built inland, and the place that they had him remote view was this big facility that the intelligence agencies were trying to get pictures of, and they were putting out all these bounties to try and get someone to give them an image of the inside of this building. Yeah. And they couldn't get anyone to do so. And so they ended up bringing the coordinates for this building to him to remote view. And he remote views this sub under construction. And it comes back from like higher up in the after he provides that intelligence, it comes back as like, nah, that's bullshit. It's not even connected to a body of water. Well, it turns out, and he gave a date for like when the thing would be launched. Turns out, like coming up on the launch, they trenched a canal from the building to the body of water. So it did launch on the date he said, and they got photos of it, and they were able to get intelligence on the sub based on his remote viewings.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, if that doesn't give you enough evidence, I mean, obviously I'd like to see the pictures and the images and the dates and the times if you were really trying to like analyze it, but I think that's fascinating. And there's all these other stories of remote viewers doing
they go over things. The other one with the Russian plane that was downed in Africa, and the remote viewers that were able to give the specific position, and Jimmy Carter talking about it, and Joe McMoneagle here talks about like after Jimmy Carter like called it out, that like he was so surprised that the remote viewers were able to do this. They ended up having to like change bases, change headquarters, because they basically got outed by the president in public.
No way. So I didn't know that Jimmy Carter had said something about remote viewers.
I didn't either, and I haven't actually looked that up, but that's what Joe's saying here.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's my quick summary, but I'll leave a link to his telling of that story because it's super fascinating. And again, as always, check out this whole podcast because this thing is just fascinating from beginning to end. But what I want to get to is where they switch topics here, because one day he was approached and given coordinates to remote view a place, and it turned out to be Mars.
He was given coordinates to Mars?
Yeah, check this out.
Joe, what happened on Mars a million years ago? What did it look like? Set the scene for us.
Well, going back to that, DOD decided, since I had spontaneous out-of-bodies, that I should try to learn how to control them, to see whether I could collect intelligence doing that too. So they hired Bob Monroe to help me with that because he's the guy, Journeys Out of the Body guy. So they actually paid him to train me. So
Joe Monroe of the Monroe Institute, or Robert Monroe of the Monroe Institute, who is the guy who wrote the book Journeys Out of the Body. Who's the one who came up with the Gateway program.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Every Thursday night, I would leave right after I finished the remote viewings. I would drive down to the Institute here in this town and crash. I get there about 11. And then early in the morning on Friday, I would start working in the lab with Bob when he worked there Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I go to bed Sunday night, and I get up at 4 a.m. or whatever and drive back to Fort Meade and do remote viewing. So I did that for a long time, many months. And so I was being trained in that when I was taking a nap. It was a Saturday evening. I'd been working for 2 days with Bob, so I was tired. So he was doing some kind of work in the lab, and I was taking a nap in the isolation chamber we have in the lab. And he woke me up. He said, I have some people here from DOD. They brought a target. And I said, oh, really? He said, yeah, I have the envelope in my shirt pocket. They gave him a sealed envelope. He folded over, put it in his shirt pocket. And I have a card here with GPS locations. So I'll read them to you and you tell me what's there. So the first GPS location he read was a huge pyramid. And I said, right away, this must be a new discovery because it's huge. It's way bigger than the one at Giza. And it's got monster rooms inside, which is not making any sense to me at all. That's okay. Just report on what you're seeing. So I did that. So I went through 6 of the 7 targets, and whatever was there, I described it. And it turns out everything I described was there. And I came out of there. I couldn't do the 7th because I was exhausted, so I stopped. And at the end, I started getting an image of human beings that were trapped in a place where the atmosphere was turning bad. I couldn't figure that out. So I said to Bob, the sun looks really weird. And he said, I don't care about the sun. Just tell me what's going on. So I said, evidently there's some kind of calamity here. And so I started thinking maybe this is a future target. I didn't know. But the whole time I thought I was on Earth and it was a new discovery. And so I came out of there and I said, it's obvious that these people are dying for some reason, but they're human. They're just really big people. They're like twice our size, 12 feet tall, but they're just like us. And they're dying, and these pyramidal places are like hibernation chambers. They're trying to survive until somebody comes to save them. And he says, well, what is this target? Is this like a new discovery or something? And the guy from DOD said, Bob Monroe has the target in his pocket. So I pulled it out of my shirt pocket, opened it up, it said Mars, 1 million BC, which made me angry. And I'll tell you why. I hate doing a target where I cannot prove ground truth, because then I don't know if it's real or I'm inventing it. It doesn't do me any good. And I can't actually sit there and say, this is exactly 100% correct.
It's unfalsifiable.
Yeah, unfalsifiable, but unprovable.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Hibernation chambers for giants.
Hibernation chambers
on Mars.
People.
Human giants.
Twice our size. And their atmosphere is dying and the sun looks weird. That's...
Men are from Mars.
Freaking fast.
Women are from Venus.
It's pretty fascinating though, huh?
Yeah. I think he's fascinating. I want to dive into him. I'm going to have to listen to this whole podcast.
Yeah.
Because I haven't checked it out yet.
Yeah, this is a really good one. It's a really good one.
Man, imagine that. 1 million years ago, planet Mars is dying. It's no longer survivable. They've developed and created these hibernation chambers for the last of their population to survive, while they're waiting for somebody to save them, as if they know there's somebody out there to save them.
Yeah. So what he goes on later and he starts talking about like his, I don't know if it's a speculation or if it's further remote viewing, because later on he talks about he can never choose a remote viewing topic. Mm-hmm. Like it has to be something he's blind to.
Right. Like because otherwise he's worried about the
whether or not he's just creating imagination is just making something up. Right. Yeah. So he never does remote viewing of his own accord on his own, knowing what he's going to look at.
But he's doing these but he mentioned earlier about the out-of-body experiences and like how he's been doing that like on his own outside of the remote viewing.
That was one of the clips I'm not going to show today, but he's got a whole story of this out-of-body experience, which is super interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what he ends up talking about is that essentially what he thinks is what happened is that they know that their planet is dying and they employ as many solutions as they can. So some people leave, some people try and hibernate, some people they're basically employing all the strategies, right? And so later on he talks about what he thinks is that we are aliens.
We are the ones that left.
Are the descendants of those who left. And he says that's why we live out of sync with the natural world here on Earth, is because we're not native to it and we don't.
Yeah, it's like,
we're not of it per se directly.
It's like what Dr. Ellis Silver wrote about in his book. Humans are not from Earth. About how like we are maladapted to Earth's environment, and there's all this evidence of the fact that we were never genetically like adapted here.
Right.
We had adapted on a different planet.
Yeah.
And that our bodies are not suited for this environment.
Well, and maybe the modern version of us humans is actually some sort of hybridization between the Martians who came here
and what sapiens
the
were
local
here.
The local hominids here.
Hominids, yeah.
That created us. Anyway, super fascinating stuff. So then later on,
the Anunnaki.
He starts talking about like civilization on Mars and pyramids on Mars, and he talks about how he went to Jet Propulsion Lab after this experience, and he like starts requesting these specific coordinates that he got on that envelope because he knew we had, you know, photo surveys of Mars. And so if you go there, like they're not classified in a sense, like as long as you know specifically what you're asking for, you can get it, but like they're not publicizing all these photos. Anyway, so he gets a bunch of these pictures back from JPL that start showing all these pyramids in the same places he was told to remote view, which is already
a million years ago.
That's crazy because he didn't even know there were pyramids there until like he remote viewed it, but then he goes and he looks and there's
confirms
still it. Like what? Anyway, so this is a whole little segment Jesse does on the history of people thinking of civilization on Mars, and we'll end with this.
All right.
Okay, before we look at the evidence that Joe has, let's set the scene here on the possibilities of life on Mars. A question with a long history and numerous theories. More than 100 years ago, American astronomer Percival Lowell suggested that certain features that were being observed on Mars were not natural. Back then, in the late 19th century, the idea that Mars had seasons, vegetation, flowing water, even large rivers was kind of popular. We had to speculate because we had no way of knowing otherwise. A lot of this speculation was fueled by dark areas and irregular-looking patterns observed on Mars. But Lowell went as far as to claim that parts of these dark areas and patterns were purposefully built irrigation systems designed by a Martian civilization. These theories were contested well into the 20th century, but the question of trees, lakes, and Martians was eventually put to rest when the Mariner 4 space probe photographed the planet up close in 1965. These photos revealed an inactive planet, barren and apparently lifeless, although there seemed to be clear evidence of water having existed in the past, with extinct riverbeds and basin-like formations. And therefore the question remained, if there was no sign of life currently visible on the planet today, could it still have existed in the past? Perhaps due to the presence of a technologically advanced civilization. In the mid-1970s, the Viking orbiters sent back an image that caused quite a stir. A mile-long structure that resembled a human face staring out into space. The infamous face on Mars. This structure provoked a lot of speculation for more than 20 years. But eventually, higher resolution images seemingly put that question to bed, at least for most. The established narrative was that this was all just a case of pareidolia, the same psychological effect that makes us see familiar shapes in the clouds, nothing but some shadows and angles of light. Questioning this interpretation became synonymous with quackery and conspiracy. The region of Mars that the face is located on is called Cydonia. Some researchers believe that the face is just one part of a larger set of structures in this region that also demonstrate unnatural features, perhaps even displaying specific design characteristics that suggest geometric patterns and intentional positioning, like stellar alignments. They claim that Cydonia contains multiple pyramids, basically the remnants of a city, all eroded over millennia. These formations appear to be aligned in highly unlikely ways, raising the question of whether their placement is entirely random. But it wasn't just the region of Cydonia. In the Elysium area at the north, probes photographed huge pyramids, some 500 meters high, some with 4 sides, just like the Great Pyramids of Giza. And near Mars's South Pole, Mariner 9 took pictures of what looked like ancient ruins. These ancient ruins were even informally dubbed by their team as the Incan City. Elsewhere, vast areas of monolithic structures, tunnels, even other faces, seem to defy explanations that they came from only natural processes. To be clear, I'm not at all denying that many of these features could just be explained by basic Mars geology. But take this thought experiment. If similar structures and patterns were imaged on Earth, using modern techniques like LiDAR mapping, presuming they had man-made origins wouldn't be so controversial at all. So why does the same conversation seem totally off limits when it comes to Mars? What if these structures are ancient? What if they're millions, even billions of years old? This raises another question. Are we seeing all the data? We must trust that organizations like NASA are sharing these images and data transparently. But this has been questioned in the past. For instance, Stanley McDaniel, a professor emeritus at Sonoma State University, wrote a 200-page book about NASA's failure to properly investigate the structures on Mars, and questioning why that was the case. Richard Hoagland made similar claims in, admittedly, his very controversial book, Dark Mission: The Secret History of NASA. Which brings us to the most recent chapter in this story. In 2001, the Mars Global Surveyor captured an image that has only just made its way onto the mainstream, causing a stir on X and gaining some high-profile attention. The image shows a square structure with clear right angles, possibly spanning several kilometers per side. The geometry suggests a high potential that this could be an engineered structure. Of course, the square on Mars is being explained away by skeptics as a natural geological structure. And it might be, but the point really is that we don't know. Moreover, we've only imaged a tiny fraction of the Martian surface in significant detail. And we've physically explored only very small portions through robotic envoys. So we don't know what we don't know. And yet, despite this, the idea that there could be artificial structures on Mars is given no credence at all. Now here's the thing. If you suggest that life could exist in some basic microscopic form on Mars, even right now, perhaps under the surface or in some particular unexplored zone, I think that even the professional skeptic would accept that as a possibility. Even President Trump openly floated the idea that life once existed or still exists on the red planet.
There's no reason not to think that Mars and all these planets don't have life,
And there is plenty of evidence to suggest this to be a distinct possibility. In 2003, methane was detected in the Martian atmosphere, an organic molecule usually seen as a marker of life. Its source is still debated, but it could be that microbial life exists somewhere below the surface of Mars. In 2015, researchers stunned the world when they claimed to have finally found definitive evidence of salty liquid water flowing on the surface of Mars in the summer months. Moving water has long been considered a crucial marker for the possibility of evolution to occur like it did on Earth. Another presumption was that life could not have survived on the surface of Mars because it's always lacked a global magnetic field, or a magnetosphere. However, in the last couple of decades, evidence has been gathered to suggest that Mars did have this protective layer, and it was probably stripped away sometime in the distant past. This means that there could have been a long period of time where Mars had rivers, lakes, perhaps even oceans, all protected by a functioning magnetosphere. We've even got our hands on physical evidence from Mars to investigate. In 1984, scientists found a Martian meteorite in Antarctica. It was codenamed ALH 84001. When the meteorite was examined, they discovered microscopic structures that resembled fossilized bacteria. The discovery even prompted President Clinton to make an official televised announcement on the possible discovery of life on Mars.
Today, Rock 84001 speaks to us across all those billions of years and millions of miles. It speaks of the possibility of life.
So from this fascinating but orthodox scientific viewpoint, we can look at numerous pieces of evidence, even the evidence of what you see around you on Earth, that if life is possible on Mars even today, the likelihood that it could produce complex, even technologically capable life forms in the past should not really be that controversial, especially when we consider how much more there is to find out about our most similar solar neighbor. But on the other side of the spectrum of orthodox theories and controversy, there have been some more interesting claims. For instance, in 2020, Haim Eshed, the head of Israel's space program for nearly 30 years and 3-time recipient of the Israel Security Award, made a shocking statement. He claimed that the United States and other nations have had direct contact with a galactic federation, some kind of coalition of alien races that have interacted with us for years. According to Eshed, these beings have instructed governments not to disclose knowledge of this to the rest of the population yet because they want to avoid mass hysteria. He went even further, however, suggesting that American astronauts are actually working alongside these extraterrestrials in an underground base on Mars. Now, of course, we can't confirm or deny this, but those interested in ufology will know that this isn't the first time that claims of meetings or secret treaties with extraterrestrials have surfaced. Something slightly more grounded is a theory suggested by researchers like Graham Hancock. He states in The Mars Mystery that there could be some connection between the symbolism of these eroded monoliths in a place like Cydonia and the ancient civilizations of Earth. At this point, who knows? There are a lot of possibilities on the table. Even the question of what happened to Mars to create this seemingly lifeless place is full of fascinating theories. Over the last decade or so, Dr. John Brandenburg, a plasma physicist and propulsion scientist, has found evidence to support his hypothesis that planetary-wide catastrophic events may have occurred on Mars. His theory suggests that high concentrations of particular elements created only via rapid processes, like in thermonuclear explosions, may have been caused by a nuclear war on Mars. Perhaps a lesson for us here, but also maybe the reason we are only able to see the remnants of our neighbor's lost civilization, if it existed at all. But here's something to ponder. When our guest, Joe McMoneagle, was tasked with remote viewing Mars, the coordinates and time period were chosen for him. The full transcript of the session has been declassified. You can read it for yourself. Now you have to ask yourself, was this just a random exercise? Or were those specific geographic coordinates already known to be significant? And who were the parties who requested the information that had provided the coordinates to the top remote viewer in the country? It seems we will always have questions about Mars until we get there to see it for ourselves.
Whoa. He's so good at laying things out.
Dude, yeah. Like, it's such a perfect summary of all the different information that is pointing to the weirdness on Mars.
And the potential of it, yeah.
You know what's really funny is this thing he brings up towards the end is like, why is the DOD coming to Joe McMoneagle while he's at the Monroe Institute, when he always comes back to the remote viewing program during the week, as he said, he's just at the Monroe Institute on the weekend. Why is someone going out of their way to find him on the weekend at the Monroe Institute and say, hey, we need you to look at these coordinates?
Yeah.
And the coordinates they want you to look at is Mars 1 million years ago? Why is there someone at the DOD asking a remote viewer to check out coordinates on Mars 1 million years ago?
They got a message.
Well, what are they doing, right? Like, just the fact that even even if you don't believe that what he's saying about Mars is true, it's a different thing to question whether the entire story happened, right? And especially because it's declassified and you can look it up, which, by the way, sounds like a great episode. We should just go over that transcript.
Yeah, I'm down.
So if it's a fact that someone from the DOD had McMoneagle remote view Mars 1 million years ago, like, it is a huge question. Why?
Yeah, what was the purpose of it?
What is...
You know what I think? They got a crop circle message, and it had coordinates and time, and it was a message to go and dig deeper into the past. It was almost like slow leakage of the information to the government in order to get the government to understand the importance of the slow disclosure for the rest of humanity. it's like a slow drip to them, so that they can slow drip it to the rest. Even though they're probably stockpiling, and it's years and decades of like them gathering the information, and then they decide to like slowly release it.
And you got to keep this in context of the time, right? Like this is the 1970s, at the height of the Cold War, when the DoD is obsessed with like this Cold War with Russia
and secret information.
So why is the DoD spending time and effort and taxpayer dollars on investigating like Mars 1 million years ago?
Even if it's one thing, if it's like even if it's different disinformation too.
Well, even if
it's the information, like
even if it's like some scientist or random citizen, like sure, like but the DoD,
especially at that time, like you would assume that even if it's just a smokescreen, why would they put so much stock into it? Why would they spend any time and energy and money? Because they're like, even what Joe McMoneagle was saying, like they paid a guy to teach him. Like they're spending money and resources and lots of taxpayer dollars. Obviously, it's not their own personal dollars.
This remote
on
viewing
this
program.
thing. Like there's efficacy in the fact that they're willing to spend this much time. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
It opens up a whole freaking can of worms, though, huh?
Yeah, I want to listen to this whole thing, and maybe next time we'll get the transcript and we'll read it.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I gotta search it. I haven't I was like just finishing this on the way to the podcasting tonight, so I haven't had the chance to search it up. But
so cool.
That sounds like a fun read.
And guys, if you haven't already, please go check out Jesse Michels and
give him a like and a subscribe.
He is awesome. He is a source of a lot of our information and interest because he gets on these really fascinating guests and does a great job breaking it down. And his video compositions are great as far as like the way he's able to break it apart and like go solo to explain the more nuanced aspects of things. And
he's got such a great balance of great research and like detail-oriented research, but like willingness to go out into the speculative territory and, you know, just ask questions and take the answers for what they are without, you know, having to immediately ground them. Like just like let the people talk what they're going to say, like what they have to say. And you judge for yourself.
With that, we thank you all for listening to this podcast right now. And if you have any information or if you have anything to share about the topics we talked about today, you know, you can email us directly at hosts@dualitycheck.net. You can check out our website at dualitycheck.net, and you can find all the links and episodes and show notes. Everything's on the website if you want all access to everything.
If you're enjoying us in video form, please help us out to grow and spread the reach on our podcast with giving us a like, a subscribe, maybe share your favorite episode with your friends on social media.
Yeah, you can follow our video content where we put everything into a video form on YouTube and Rumble. Like, subscribe, comment. It helps us grow and reach more people. And, you know, we love Greg and we love Amy, but we'd love to have a handful of more people get involved with the conversation and maybe talk amongst each other. And we'll get that Discord up and running at some point, and where you guys can mingle and talk. And we just thank you for listening. And obviously you can find us on anywhere you find your podcast, Apple, Spotify, all these things. But yeah, please like, comment, subscribe, share.
Leave us a review on iTunes or episode review on Spotify. That would be great. Thank you so much.
We appreciate you, and we'll see you next week. Later.
Adios, people. Goodbye.